Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right, guys, thank you very much. I am here with Timothy Grossman. Now, Timothy, I've done some reading about Timothy's life, and very interesting. We'll get into that, but what Timothy created down there in Lexington, Kentucky, which is my old stomping grounds, is a source of wellness. First of all, let me welcome Timothy to the program. Timothy, welcome to the program. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Casey, and thank you for having me.
So I understand that you dealt with a lot of challenges early on, and that brought you into meditation. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah. Well, as a child, like my father had died when I was 6, right? And that was pretty tough. My mother was out of the picture. Not. It wasn't her fault. It wasn't her choice, but it was just the family dynamic at the time. And so when my father died and I had a guardian, he had gotten really ill and he had died. I mean, by the time I was 9, I'd seen 2 deaths and went to live with some extended family. And it was challenging, right? For a lot of different reasons. There was a lot of verbal abuse, some physical abuse, a lot of ridicule. By the time I was about 14, I had gone to the gym, started working out. I was really angry. I was doing everything I could to just work that out. I was boxing. And I had a really, really difficult time seeing kids getting picked on. So I was kind of I would challenge the bullies and I had glasses, I'd take off my glasses and I would just handle business. And that was my way of just, so I got into a little bit of trouble as some teenagers do. I was pretty rebellious and I met this guy. This chance meeting, he was like, look, everyone's got a different path. Your writing and the stuff you're doing, it's really creative. I want to teach you just how to meditate a little bit, just how to breathe, just how to, I don't want to see you have to come back here and deal with me again. I was like, okay. And so through that process, I started noticing that the consciousness shift, the awareness shift, and it really helped create some peace. And things fell into place over time. I left my family. I was living with a friend in Denver. And for the first time in my life, I called my mom. She came, I was about 16. She came out there. She was so happy, as a mother would be, right? And, about 3 months later, I just said, hey, can I come live with you? And she's like, yeah. So I ended up in Louisville, which was so good, but I continued with this practice for a while. And then I think internally, I don't know how insight works for some people, but I says, I'm not disciplined. I'm really rebellious. And I met some great people throughout my civilian career and some family members. And they were like, the military is really tough. And I says, okay, what's the toughest thing you can join out the gate? It's like, join the infantry if you want to do, something difficult. And then you can go to Ranger, do this, do that. So I joined the infantry and I went to the 101st Airborne and served with the 3rd Brigade, deployed with them once and deployed with the 1st Infantry Division twice, 2 times in the Balkans and once in Iraq before I kind of had a lot of culminating injuries that pushed me out the door. Of course, the military and meditation don't necessarily jive, right? I think, yeah. So, but there's a whole different piece of mindfulness that we're not even aware of we're doing. In marksmanship, for instance, you're focusing on your breathing, you're focusing on your sight picture, you're focusing on your trigger squeeze. Everything is kind of just zeroing out, and then you're focusing on that one thing. Or if you're doing a force march, a heavy ruck march, it's another thing. There's a lot of mind over matter. It's 10% physical and 90% mental. So, but it wasn't taught like that, right? It's just something that organically comes through the process of becoming disciplined. So I didn't make the connection, but when I got out in 2005, I went to start college, and then I came across some guys who really helped me. I says, well, how do I do what you're doing? You know, I didn't have any idea how to deal with the civilian world, how to navigate VA, do any of that. I says, well, you know, it's a tough process to get in and do this sort of advocacy work. But I did. I went to work for a very large organization, premier organization in Philadelphia. So I moved my family to Philly, and ended up becoming a regional director there before I left. And then went to DC to do work at Walter Reed. And with the second organization I worked with, oh my gosh, it wasn't just navigating VA. It was, here's a combat stress recovery program, and we're going to take guys out on a week odyssey. And so then there was yoga nidra, there was qigong, there was equine therapy, and we started seeing the needle move tremendously with people in traumatized settings. It's not just going to the doctor, getting pills, going home and sitting for a week or two and stewing on what's not working in life, because medications are great, they're very much needed, but they're not the end all be all, right?
Right.
And so we saw the holistic work was amazing. Well, like a lot of people, I'm doing great. You know, I wasn't internally. I was struggling. I was dying, but I felt like it was more important for me to push ahead and push forward and help other people than it was to take care of myself. I had no idea how to do that. And the military doesn't teach you to go to the doctor. You know, if you go into if you get a sick call, you know, or you get a profile chit and don't have to perform physical tasks or go out to the field, and you're looked at pretty poorly.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So anyways, we saw that this holistic shift, this complementary medicine shift was working pretty well with a lot of people. And I was fortunate enough to see that working, refer people into those programs, sometimes go with warriors on those programs. And eventually it was like, okay, I kind of took a deep nosedive and really had to get back to taking care of me. And so then I went and did those things, you know, and I was very personally, because of when we experience pain in life, right? We become skeptical that anything's going to work. But eventually at some point you say, well, if this hasn't worked and this hasn't worked, or I haven't moved the needle here, I'm almost willing to do anything. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll stand in front of a horse. Fine. I'll do Qigong. Fine. I'll practice mindfulness. And it was so tough, but it was worth it. And I did transcendental meditation. I've done all these different modalities. So after some time, you know, and searching for meaning, I'm like, well, something told me to get back into meditation. And so I did. And then something, you know, because I began working with these modalities little by little as a teenager, something said, well, take a Reiki class. And I said, oh, okay. I'm starting to then not try to control everything around me.
Okay, you took a shot, and you didn't say, okay, I'm not gonna give that a shot. You were like at the point where, hey, I'm gonna try everything. I'll be in front of the horse. I'll do the equine stuff, and then, you know, I'll do things. So, were you skeptical at all with the Reiki?
Oh yeah, of course. You know, and it's not because I hadn't lived these things. You know, some of this stuff early in life. It's because it was burnt out of me.
Okay.
You know, as a child, it's like we have this wonder. As a teenager, we have this idealism. We get into our 20s, we go to college, we carry it through, and at some point we begin to find our voice. But there's so many different layers of trauma that happen throughout that process. And that can kind of stamp things out. And so, yeah, you know, but after I took my first class, I was like, wow, something shifted. And I'm not sure entirely what, but this is giving me breathing room. Even in concert with meditation, it's like they're mutually inclusive instead of exclusive. And there's a reason for that. If you look at the history of how this Japanese practice was developed, they were inextricably intertwined. You can do one without the other, but you really deepen the ability. And so what Reiki does is it kind of broadens one's awareness. A 15-year-old told me this. He's like, well, I felt like I was with blinders on. and I was just only seeing here. And then after the class, I feel like I'm seeing, you know, like I said, okay. I said, cool. I says, I love that. You know, I've worked with this with veterans. I'm not a, and I think it works great with trauma. We all have trauma in life.
Yeah.
You know, your socioeconomic status doesn't matter. Your upbringing doesn't matter. Your race doesn't matter. Your religion doesn't matter. There is something that has hurt us deeply to the core that we still carry with us as adults. And so I think the practice of Reiki helps create a container that helps that come up, be seen, heard, felt, and released in a very authentic way. And it's different for everybody. There's not a cookie cutter approach.
Right.
And people will begin to, and the way I see it, they will begin to, in the way I work with my clients, it's their truth that matters. It's their understanding that matters. It's not me telling them what, you know, a lot of about, you know, because it's experiential. So when you do this and then you learn to follow the breath and you learn like the polyvagal work down and breathing out of the belly, breathing that up. And I've studied a lot doing the trauma-informed stuff with Engaged Mindfulness Institute of Pat Ogden, Bessel van der Kolk, David Treleaven, and they all say that trauma is held in the body. Well, I think it's, you know, I'm not a PhD, but I think it's necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we go through the practice of practicing Reiki, and then we follow mindfulness, it creates that container and that opportunity for these things to then become released. And then what happens with the consciousness piece is that you begin to live more authentically. Whatever your authentic self is, whatever you love in life, however you interact in any of your professional or personal relationships, it becomes clear. Things still show up in life. We still have catalysts. We still have challenges. It's not a pass on life, but
Right.
it is a practice to help people become more authentic. It helps leaders become better. It helps individuals within workplace dramatics hold more space for themselves, take care of themselves, and then respond differently to others. And, you know, for, you know, the individual, and this is my focus, it's like, it's not for people who are deep into yoga, although I'll teach them, people who are deep into these different philosophies, it's for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, who don't know anything about what this is, and to make it accessible and make it comfortable and make it something that is not intimidating, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I have so many questions, man. But first of all, thank you for your service. That's pretty incredible. But from what I'm getting from you, you never said the words, but were you battling with PTSD?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Seriously,
So I did.
yeah.
Yeah. I didn't hear the word.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I could. That's what I was thinking. So now, how do you go from finding out all these things, and you're a very introspective person? How do you make the pivot and decide that you're going to help people for the rest of your life by opening up what you're doing now? How do you make that jump? How did that happen? And then tell me what that is.
Oh, wow. It was a gradual process. It's like, wow, you know, once I saw the light bulb went off, the aha moment came, wow, this is really creating peace and not for nothing. I didn't want to be here anymore. And I lost so many friends who didn't want to be here anymore. And I understood deeply and intimately and there's statistics, but we typically understand it as a 22 a day, right? I had colleagues that didn't make it, that I loved to death, and they were helping people. Friends who had served with, people who I was trying to help, that it just didn't happen quick enough. And when you lose your career, you know, you lose your identity. Your family doesn't want to be around you. You're alienated from your kids. You can't hold a job. And then if there's substances involved, that's a whole nother, you know, it made perfect sense to me. And I will say that, you know, and, you know, mileage may vary, but it was really just kind of walking off a ledge and saying, okay, so there's a difference between surrendering and giving up, right?
Yeah.
Surrendering control and just being led, right? And so I was led. I said, okay, I'm going to take this class, see what happens. All right, I'm going to take a second class and see what happens. All right, I'm going to practice and see what happens. Beginning to give myself grace for, you know, lashing out or being angry or being upset or feeling stuff. And it was like, if I just got quiet, it's like, wow, okay. And then even something happened yesterday. It was like really cool, because I was an advocate for 10 years and I was used to holding people accountable. And the way I showed up in that was very, very different from the way I've been militarily and organizationally, So it happened spontaneously, right? And then I worked with friends, family. I worked with some very, very, like myself, skeptical military people who had a lot of stuff happening in their life. And like, Tim, like, this is whatever you're doing. This is amazing. This is great. I said, okay, cool. And so, yeah, sure, there's fear walking into opening up to the world, but I've got clients who are doing great. And it was a decision. I've been a trainer since I was a sergeant in 2002 and 3. I've worked organizationally in building programs. I've worked at very high levels as far as creating these things. So I want to teach people. If this helps move the needle for people, everyday people from all walks of life, get some space to be better in their own lives, then it's worth it. And it's not something where sure, if you want to say after Zabaton, you want to sit on a meditation mat, awesome. If you want to sit in your chair, but you can utilize the practice of Reiki even if you're driving. It's just an intention. Just if you have to walk out of the room out of a very tense board meeting or a very tense interaction with a coworker, or, you get cut off, after you've done some practice with it, it is like a light switch. And that's how I see it. So if it can help people, and I think we have a lot of things going on in the world that people need help with. We just went through an 18, 24-month pandemic. People have lost people. People have been cut off. And there's so many layers of anxiety related to that. So if it can help people live a little better, I'm happy to do it.
Gotcha. And how do people get a hold of you?
So you can get a hold of me at asourceofwellness.com. I work with wellness centers in Lexington, but I also have an intro to Reiki class with mindfulness and get involved. It's like a 4-hour. It's like half of a regular class because I have to teach to International Center for Reiki Training Standards, and I believe in that. But this intro class, you get access to the practice of Reiki, and we can do it online on Zoom. We can do it in person. I think always sometimes if you're like organizationally, if you're in an organization or you're in a leadership position, try it out first with a few people, see how you like it. If it works, then you kind of implement it going downstream and give people the opportunity. But also with groups.
So it's one-on-one and groups. It's both.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Teaching, awesome. I can do a group if it doesn't matter how many.
and you could be in international. You could help people. It's through Zoom, so you can have anybody. As long as they speak English, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you got a bunch of people that have questions for you, buddy. Mr. Producer, got time to take any questions? Yeah. Okay. So people want to ask you some questions, guys. I'm speaking with Timothy Grossman, and Timothy has created a source of wellness. And one more time, Timothy, how do people get the best way to get a hold of you? Just I know it's monotonous, but people tune in and out, so I want to make sure they know.
asourceofwellness.com. You can also reach me. My email is info@asourceofwellness. That'll get our global email box, and then we'll work from there. And I'm super excited to be able to reach out and help people. I think that it's so needed, and I think it will lead us to a trajectory of deeper interactions with each other, ourselves, and in all walks and aspects of our lived experience.
Got it. Yeah. Well, there's nobody more qualified to be doing it than you, Timothy. I mean, that story is pretty amazing, man. All right, let's go to your people that want to ask you questions. Mr. Producer, what do you got, buddy?
We have Ryan in Dallas wants to know, how does it make you feel when you help someone have the moment of clarity that you had?
Good question.
Oh, well, that just hit me in the chest, man. You know, it's like anything you do. First, you have to walk through that period of doubt. Like, am I really going to move the needle for anybody? And it's the same way when I was writing, and doing stuff administratively. But when you see somebody and you've either completed a session with them or you've seen the growth within a day or two, I like using, I like metrics. I learned a lot about metrics and about showing impact. So I also do like a survey you can take, and then it's for you, and then after you've done it for a while, say 30 days, take another stab at that and see if you feel different, see if it's moved the needle metrically on your wellness scale. But when I actually see the shift in somebody, that is a greater gift than there's nothing better than seeing somebody walk their own path of healing and feel more empowered and honored. That's like money. I mean, short story, real short. I took a guy, and I've also asked some people if I could use their story, and they said yes. You gave
yeah. Thanks for that, Timothy. Yeah. You don't have to use names, but yeah. I'm gonna love to hear this. Please let me hear.
But there was this guy, and he was severely injured in Iraq, and then there's some other things happened to him. He was assaulted and suffered like a lot, and so the first experience I had was taking him on a shark fishing trip. And this guy was a Navy guy. And he was panicking. He was losing his mind. He was like, oh my gosh, I can't. He said, I'll only go if you go, Tim. So I went with him, and my bosses, like, yeah, if this is going to get this guy out here, do it. And he was out there spotting turtles on the ocean. He caught the most fishes. I puked all over the boat, like outside the boat. I don't have any sea legs. I don't mind rappelling from helicopters and all that stuff, but I'm an ocean guy. So, that was really great. That was like, and it totally changed his life. And like I said, this is where I really began to witness the holistic space. But even just recently, guy comes in, and it's been like, we've done two sessions. And he's an IT guy. He's like very cerebral, very left brain.
Very smart guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Very smart guy, like all of us really skeptical, like, what's this, going to do for me? I'm like, okay, just, we'll see. And he's like, wow, everything's going so much better. He's like, my wife sees it. I feel better. And, Viktor Frankl said from stimulus to response, that space is where freedom lies. And that not only applies to each person with an external, but also to the self, what we tell ourselves. And cognitively, we know, well, if I talk trash to myself, I'm gonna feel bad, but how do I stop doing it? That's the other thing I think, is that there's slight shifts. There's very incremental. The human mind can't turn on a 180 on a dime. There's a lot of integration that has to take place, is the way I see it. So watching people shift and seeing people feel better and seeing people find peace, of their own understanding, not of what I'm telling them. I do very little philosophizing. I have a lot of philosophy, but I don't want to infringe on someone else's free will. So, but watching them shift is beautiful. And, it's, like I said, you can't put a dollar sign on that.
That's awesome. Wow, guys, I've been speaking with Timothy Grossman. Timothy, really interesting, great information, great stories, great emotion, man. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody who wrote. I'm sorry I didn't get to everybody, but we're completely out of time. But Timothy, real quick, just tell us where to get a hold of you one more time. And it's a pleasure to meet you. And I can't wait to hear what you got to say next. Thank you.
Okay. So you can reach me at asourceofwellness.com. My email address is info@asourceofwellness.com. Please don't hesitate to reach out. If you have questions, if you're just like wondering what it's all about, I'm more than happy to take the time. We can set up a Zoom, we can consult, we can traverse back and forth. I'm just very happy to have the opportunity to be with you guys, Casey, and to, just share a little bit. I think it's I'm very humbled for the opportunity.
Well, we love having you, Timothy Grossman, everybody, and we'll be right back. Thanks, Timothy.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you can now listen live on the MyTuner Radio and online Radio Box apps for iOS, Android, and the Amazon App Store. Or check us out online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on onlineradiobox.com/US so you don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.